Hello and good morning, everyone, and welcome to your daily sit rep for Thursday, the 2nd of October, 2025, barreling right through the year. I didn't mention it yesterday, but happy October to everyone. Finally feeling nice outside here in Central Texas. Robert, good morning. Let's go ahead and jump inside the Beltway. And there's a lot to cover on the domestic front today, but let's go ahead and start with Senate Majority Leader John Thune.
So Thune is having back-channel discussions with vulnerable Senate Democrats. He said if they can get 10 Senate Democrats to cross the aisle and vote to stop the shutdown, that Senate Republicans are willing to negotiate on Obamacare subsidies. As far as I can tell, the government shutdown is likely to continue at least until tomorrow because there are Senate members out of Washington, D.C. for Yom Kippur, so they're not planning any votes until at least Friday. And then the Trump administration is also, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead. You go ahead, Robert.
So according to some people familiar with the matter, the remaining employees at the Department of Justice's Community Relations Service received reduction in force notices on 29 September. And the other office that's tied to this, the Office for Access to Justice, which provides training for DOJ lawyers to do pro bono legal work, has also received reduction in force notices. And then yesterday, FBI Director Kash Patel said that the FBI cut ties with the Anti-Defamation League. And he said that the FBI is not going to partner with political fronts, quote, masquerading as watchdogs. And the ADL also removed its glossary of extremism and hate, following criticism over including Charlie Kirk in Turning Point USA in the glossary, which was also the source of Kash Patel's comments cutting ties with the ADL. And then the Pentagon apparently is planning to require 5,000 uniformed personnel, civilian employees, and contractors in the Office of the Secretary of Defense and the Joint Staff to sign new non-disclosure agreements that are going to prohibit the release of non-public information. And according to a separate document obtained by the Washington Post, those same officials are also going to be subjected to random polygraph examinations going forward. The idea here is to stop the leaks. Yeah, the idea here is to stop the leaks.
Now, that is somewhat important. So really, it seems like they're trying to block the release of what's called unclassified FOU, or for official use only information, which is technically unclassified. You're not supposed to use it outside of official channels, but you're not going to prison if you release an FOU document. When you go through your security clearance process, Robert, I'm sure you remember this. I remember doing this in my first unit and just signing form after form after form saying all these programs you get read in on, and you got to sign this stuff. You say, I'll never talk about this, or this stuff's going to expire in 25 years after the date of information or whatever, and you sign all this stuff. And so it's interesting now that they're going to apparently start buckling down. I wonder if they're going to actually prosecute people for releasing unclassified information after they sign this NDA, because if they don't, it's kind of toothless.
Yeah, I haven't seen what they're planning to do as far as consequences, but apparently these documents did not say they were going to limit this to any specific personnel by rank. So this is also going to include potentially general officers as well that have to sign these NDAs and be subjected to polygraphs, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, you want to talk about interesting? Take a lifestyle polygraph. At any rate, well, good for the Pentagon. Uniformed personnel should not be releasing that stuff anyway. Please continue.
And then yesterday, Senator Chris Murphy said that the Trump administration's move to pause $18 billion in federal infrastructure spending to New York is an attempt to punish political opposition. He said, quote, let's open our eyes. This isn't a functioning democracy any longer when in the middle of a high-stakes funding fight, the president illegally suspends federal projects in states run by Democrats. This was after Russell Vought, the director of OMB, announced that they're putting this $18 billion project under federal review, and they're also cutting $8 billion in green energy infrastructure funding that has apparently gone primarily to a handful of Democrat-controlled states.
This is very important. Chris Murphy is like the darling politician of this burgeoning color revolution movement. And if you'll recall, longtime watchers, well, let's just say going back to March, at least, Chris Murphy has been talking about this. He was in this town hall in Connecticut talking to his constituents. And I got video of this. I mean, it's not like super secret, but I published it online for everyone as well. And he's saying, Democrats, he said, we're having these debates internally right now about what do you call them? Exceptional measures. He said, we're going to have to take some exceptional measures to stop the Trump administration. And he continues and he says, we're going to need, he says hundreds of thousands of protesters in the streets. I'm sure he meant millions, because that's really what they need. Hundreds of thousands of protesters, not going to cut it. Not for what they want to do. And so he said, Democrats have to start taking risks, because eventually we are going to ask you to take risks. And if we're not taking risks, you're not going to. And it was at that moment, it's pretty clear that Murphy is aligned with this color revolution movement. Also, Senator Chris Murphy is mentioned in many of their emails and posts, the main organizers here of this thing that's going on. So Chris Murphy, obviously a central political figure in this movement. Robert, thanks for that update. Let's go ahead and move on to the Consumer Finance Protection Bill.
Yeah. So actually, the Trump administration is apparently bringing the CFPB, or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, out of mothballs, and they're telling a team of enforcement attorneys and examiners in the agency to begin a probe into current and past investigations over the last 5 years that could be tied to debanking. So the CFPB has been basically on pause since February, where they have not been actually taking any enforcement actions. And now they're going to be looking back the last 5 years of investigations, and they've been told to report on any evidence either from the CFPB or financial institutions making any of these debanking decisions on the basis of religion, political beliefs, or lawful business practices. Mm-hmm. And then finally, over in the Homeland Operations side, one small update. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee said that he expects about 150 Tennessee National Guard troops to be deployed to Memphis, Tennessee in support of the federal surge. He said they're not going to be armed and they're not going to make arrests unless local authorities in Memphis request it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, is he getting a lot of pushback from the city of Memphis yet?
I haven't seen any pushback from the city government yet.
Yeah, Memphis needs it. That's for sure. All right. Thanks for that, Robert. Let's go ahead and move on to today's Global Sit Rep. Jared, same to you. Lots of stuff to cover. Let's go ahead and run through this.
Yep. I'm going to breeze through it here. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced the launch of their new K visa yesterday, and this is meant to promote the exchange of scientific talent between China and other countries. That's nominally what the H-1B visa program is for, and it was launched pretty much to say, hey, look, the U.S. is backing down. We're going to step all this up. We can do more people-to-people exchanges. However, they have not released all the details yet. The spokesman said that the consulates and embassies will release procedural and selection criteria soon. So they haven't told everybody how to do it yet. And there's an estimated 18.9% August 2025 youth unemployment rate, and lots of reports of widespread dissent over this move on Chinese social media. But regardless of that, Chinese state media is pushing forward saying, don't worry about that or don't worry about the unemployment rate. Don't worry about not getting a job. This is not going to affect you. We're just opening this up. So this is
pretty Chinese K visa, Jared, a Chinese K visa is basically their H-1B, and they're going to start bringing foreigners to work inside Chinese scientific industry.
That's what they're saying. From what I've seen too, they don't even need a sponsor. They apply and they can get in. So it's going to be, I don't think it will be wide open. That hasn't normally been the way that Chinese visas work. That said, it's a lot looser than what it has been. So I think this actually stands a risk of causing some pretty significant destabilization inside of China. At least social destabilization. I'm not saying it'll be like overthrow the government or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know. We're probably not talking about like a huge number of jobs here, but this seems to me that the United States and China are locked in this AI race, and it's basically a knife fight at this point. And both countries, well, China has not necessarily needed to bring in foreign talent for AI, and the United States has, I think, in H-1B visa problems aside, I think the U.S. AI race has benefited from bringing in foreign talent to work on these AI projects, because we're putting all our smartest people into finance and underwater basket weaving, not STEM, and certainly not computer science and AI. So this isn't, I would say this to me just on a cursory look, really looks like China may want to scoop up some of these people who may otherwise go to the United States to work in artificial intelligence and bring them on board for themselves, which I think is very interesting. At any rate, let's go ahead and move on to this latest out of Australia.
Yes. Well, this is the U.S. proposing to buy equity in Australian critical mineral companies. This was at a meeting that Washington hosted with 15 Australian companies. And this is pretty much the latest that we've seen from trying to establish a critical mineral supply chain outside of China's influence. There was the quadrilateral dialogue announcement. The Australian government said that they want to build their own reserve, which was in support of that. And one of their primary think tanks said, hey, yeah, during that Ukraine deal where Trump's saying, hey, we want critical minerals, start offering right now because we can get investment. This is following on, I expect it to go through, which establishes a critical mineral supply chain outside of China. Moving much closer to home, kind of in the White House here, Axios, citing anonymous sources familiar with the matter, claims that President Trump told Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu regarding the Gaza peace plan that he had to take it or leave it, and that leaving it would mean that the U.S. walks away from Israel. That's, again, anonymous sources, so we will take it with a grain of salt. However, that does track with the trend that we've seen, and that is a significant escalation or significant degradation of the U.S.-Israeli relationship if it is true. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into a bit more of that with the primary piece later. Over in Europe, the French conducted a maritime boarding operation of the Borke. This is a vessel that's considered by the European Union to be part of Russia's shadow fleet for basically sanctions evasion, but they're accusing this vessel of being the launch point for the drones that overflew Denmark a week ago. When asked about the boarding at the Warsaw Security Forum, President Macron even said that there were serious offenses committed by this crew which justify the current judicial procedure. I expect there to be fallout from this because as far as I've seen, I think this is the first boarding of a Russian vessel since the start of the Ukraine war. I could be wrong on that, but I can't remember seeing another one in that time. Mm-hmm. Going on down to Panama, Panama established a parliamentary group dedicated to, quoting, friendship between Panamanians and Chinese earlier this week. Now, this group is a direct response to a larger and previously established group, just the same but for Americans. So this is the latest in a diplomatic tit for tat that's just out in the open down in Panama between China and the United States. The group that was covering this, they even pointed out, hey, yeah, we've seen the ambassadors personally go out and conduct diplomacy, shutting down migrant camps, opening up additional things with the express intent of gaining influence. And all of this we're going to keep seeing more of this. As soon as I get more updates, I will. Mm-hmm. I'll pass on.
So, but by the way, we got a member in special projects, and he has permanent residency down in Panama. And he said for like a decade or longer, and he said just over the past 10 years, he stopped going down to Panama because he said there's so many Chinese people down there, and there are signs in Chinese, and there are stores in China, no English, no Spanish, only Chinese. And he said Panama is basically, or maybe even parts of Panama, like Panama City, he said, are basically becoming a Chinese colony. And that's one reason why, I don't know, Panama Bros, RIP, because I know Panama was a very popular third country destination for a long time, going back to Sovereign Man and all that stuff back in the mid 2010s. All right, at any rate, let's move on to Brazil.
Okay. Brazil announced a large, they're calling it an operation by name, but they're also saying it's just a military exercise. I think there's probably some translations issues there. Regardless, Operation Atlas, they announced that just yesterday. It's starting today, will go on until the 11th. There are going to be approximately 10,000 troops across all of their armed forces, so every single branch, including the Navy, into the highlighted border states here, all four of them. They primarily border Venezuela, but also Guyana and Suriname. Now, the express intent of this is to strengthen the military presence at the border of Venezuela. And this will involve their helicopter carrier, based kind of just an aircraft carrier for Brazil. This, to me, strongly suggests that they're worried about the stability of Venezuela. If they are and this is per Brazil, the largest exercise they've ever run in these states. So that to me looks like they're at least getting the first forces out there to be able to say, all right, we are here for emergency response in case things go south up north.
So Brazil is talking about locking down their border to prevent refugees coming out of Venezuela.
They're not talking about it, but their actions show it.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Significant data point. Venezuela continues to be, I think we said it early last month, Venezuela is on regime change watch. All right, thanks for that, Jared. Let's go ahead and move on to today's protest 70, which is above baseline. I'll tell you what, these weekday baseline protests are the numbers starting to tick up here over the past month or so. All right, with that, there's a question in the chat about next week. I'm holding a free training webinar on how to build a local intelligence cell. If you haven't noticed, we talk about this stuff every day. The color revolution movement continues to grow. It's burgeoning. We got a government shutdown. We've got I was just talking to someone messaged me on Signal yesterday about this Al-Qaeda threat. And apparently it's real. Apparently it's real enough for the National Counterterrorism Center to come out and make publish a report about it, like last week or 2 weeks ago. And then we got the midterms, and then we've got the 2028 elections, potential war with China, regime change in Venezuela, possibly. There's just a lot of stuff going on. Regardless of what's going on at the national or strategic level, you are going to be impacted at the local level. I hear all the time people are saying, Mike, I'm preparing for hyperinflation, or I'm preparing for a stock market crash, or hyperinflation, or a massive cyber attack, or war with China, and all that stuff. And all that stuff, sure. I mean, it is concerning at varying levels. But you are going to be affected by whatever's out your front door, down your driveway, down your street, in and around your neighborhood and community. That's the stuff that you got to be prepared for. You got to be prepared for the direct effects of these big national level or strategic level events. To do that, you need information, and you need real-time information, not old information, not bad information. You need good real-time information to do that. I'm going to teach you how to get good real-time information in your locality. It doesn't matter if you live in an urban area, suburban, exurb, rural area, does not matter. It's the same process, just different sources. Next Thursday night, the 9th of October, 7 p.m., 45 minutes, followed by Q&A. I schedule 15 minutes. It always goes longer. Sometimes I've done 2 hours of Q&A before. Be there, take notes, learn this stuff. You're going to need it because it's going to be on the test. That's why I'm teaching it. Head over to forwardobserver.com/intel-cell. That is the address where you can register for next week's webinar, 1 week from today. All right, over on the early warning agenda, I'm doing this deep dive into color revolutions, and it's undeniable that this is what they're building. I was just talking to someone the other day. I said, they said, Mike, I haven't heard them talk about launching a color revolution. And yeah, because that's the unstated goal. But when you're on this remember, we're dealing with 3 phases in this thing: protest, resistance, revolution. And the third phase is the unstated phase. If a Democrat wins, there will be no color revolution. So of course they're not talking about it. But the unspoken part of this is that once you have a national organized resistance movement, it is very easy to push them over the edge into more. We're talking about nonviolence here, but tipping them into actual revolutionary behavior. And there's a high correlation rate between color revolutions and elections. And so I think we're still on track for 2028. We're gonna deep dive into this. I'm going to tell you some alarming statistics that I was punching through in my Excel sheet yesterday. We'll also talk about this Texas redistricting case and some other things involving Qatar and Israel. With that, listen, if you would like access to the rest of our early warning briefing, it's members only briefing we do every day, head over to forwardobserver.com/trial. Join us. There's still time if you go right now. And with that, Jared, please take us out. And early warning folks, please stand by.